we've come a long way. All right, so I'll just talk kind of broadly. I know this is supposed to be an AI one, but I unfortunately have an obligation later during my talk, so thank you guys for being flexible. I'll speak a little bit about some of the platforms. We've been lucky enough to build, I think, two of the largest digital health companies in dermatology, and a little bit about kind of what I was thinking when we were building it, more so to just get you guys to think a little bit more about how to problem solve. Digital, like I've been lucky. I've built skincare brands and things like that. Those are way easier than digital health. Digital health is tough because there's so much red tape. There's a resistance to change. I think with doctors, we're kind of programmed not to move the needle too much, and we have, which I think is a good thing. We have this kind of like questioning attitude towards everything, and you need it, and it's important, and you have to do everything the right way. But it also kind of stays as a barrier through innovation. You have to kind of find this grace in between. So background, as Dr. Noor mentioned, I went to school at Michigan State, residency at Mount Sinai. Simple mantra, if it doesn't exist, you have to build it. So the biggest thing, and some of you guys might be a little bit later in your career, some earlier, is how do you start? Everybody wants to go build the next big tech company, skincare brand, but how do you actually start and think about it? For me, it's very simple. You just solve problems. Every single day, there's going to be different problems you see that frustrate you. And if nobody else has solved it, maybe you should. For me, I didn't have any money. I wanted to be a venture capitalist. This is where the thinking kind of started. Again, we were kind of hustlers when we were back in the day, right? Again, I didn't have any money. I was making, I don't know, sub $30,000 a year in New York City, which didn't pay for more than my subway, I think, at that point. But I wanted to be a venture capitalist. What did I do? I found a developer, and I figured out very simply that he charges X to go build things. And I was like, look, what's your act cost? And let's say it's arbitrarily $30 an hour. And he would normally charge people $60 to $100 an hour. I told him, look, maybe we charge $40 an hour. You make a little bit of money, but then we take some equity. So maybe we can have some upside. We can help them build certain things. And he had no health tech, digital health background. He was just a developer. I had some background. I'm like, look, we can add value. I think, let's try it. Most of the companies didn't do that great, but it was a great way of trying to solve a problem and see, it kind of sparked that thinking process. So then when I started practicing, I started thinking of all the problems in the clinical setting. Let's start with small problems. What are the problems you see with patients every single day? What are the hardest patients that you have to treat? For me, it was hair loss. And we had at that time, topical minoxidil, oral finasteride, only options. PRP was still kind of an if. So I started playing with different compounds, and I started, mixing and matching different ingredients to see if I can get hair growth. And these were my initial batch of people. And then we started really looking at different paradigms. This was, I think, 2 months and 2 weeks after starting therapy. Now, every hair person on earth would scream at me and say, 3 months is when hair starts growing. I don't know how, I can't Photoshop that if I tried. So, obviously we had growth a little bit quicker. So the question is how? But, when I take this back to digital health and thinking about it, we were able to find these really cool topicals and treatments for our patients, but that's not the innovation. The innovation was in technology because compounding existed, but how did you get it? So you're thinking about writing a script somewhere and faxing it. We still fax, I don't know why, but we still do. The innovation was trying to figure out, how do I scale this in a way where my colleagues can use it? That was the solve, and that's where digital health becomes really interesting. For us, we built in the early days, I don't know if I'm supposed to admit this, but we would get these HIPAA compliant PDFs, and I would manually be sending them to the pharmacies because we didn't know how to automate all that stuff. So we kind of just figured it out. Eventually, we started building out tech and trying to solve bigger problems, but that gave birth to this whole hair stim thing that many of you guys may have been using or still use to this day. Again, the early days, manually sending everything, you kind of just have to figure it out. I'll tell you this with digital health and tech as a whole. A lot of times there's no pathway to do all this stuff. You have to figure it out. It's very humbling. A lot of sleepless nights, as Omar knows. I was always cranky, I think. But you do your best. And if any of you guys did use Hairstim back in the day, and when you got those emails from customer support whenever there was an issue, I was customer support. I had a kind of like a generic name, customer support agent or whatever it was, and I answered 100 emails every morning before going to the office, and you kind of fake it till you make it. That was the first foray. I started thinking a little bit bigger. Back in 2018, 2019, we had a lot of issues with generic medications. Government sued a bunch of these manufacturers, realized there was price fixing going on. Unfortunately, we couldn't wait that long. If I want to give clobetasol for a patient, it costs $400 with their insurance. What am I supposed to do? I don't know exactly what happened with all those lawsuits. I'm sure they're probably still in court and people still charge a ton of money, but we had to create some sort of innovation because there's a human being staring at me who needs their clobetasol or ketoconazole or anything really at that point, and they couldn't afford to get it even with their insurance. So we built something called Skin Medicinals. Again, I will never take credit for the formulations being something revolutionary. What we did is we built access. And again, we use technology to do so. So again, we built essentially a platform where physicians, dermatologists can create custom compounded medications at scale quickly within 30 seconds. Now we have 17,000 derm prescribers on the platform. We've saved, that number is not updated. I'm pretty sure it's closer to $1 billion at this point. So we made real change in saving people money. We have over millions of patients served. This is a little bit older, and I don't know how much we've donated at this point, but we've tried our best with grace to take some of the good things that happened to us and pay it forward. So again, what was the innovation? It was the access point. And the reason why I'm giving these examples, because everybody concentrates on the outcome, but you have to figure out how do you get to that outcome? That is where the innovation lies. And then think about it. Again, if you think about something simple as an EMR, we realize that most of these EMRs don't connect. What a simple innovation that if somebody can solve will save billions of dollars across the board, right? So it's a little bit of just taking a step back, looking at the bigger picture, and then figuring out kind of how to approach it. Because if you are struggling with something, I text Omar all the time. I'm like, hey, how do I do this? How do I do this? How do I do this? And he usually has the same problem. We both commiserate over it. A lot of glasses of wine commiserating over the years, but those are opportunities to save problems or to solve problems, excuse me. And so, I'm getting a little bit older in my age. The gray hairs are starting to peek in, but a lot of you younger dermatologists out there, you're a lot smarter than we are. You're a lot more motivated than we are. There are a lot of problems to solve. And I will say this very kindly and respectfully. The more we wait for other people to solve these problems for us, the more trouble we're going to get in, because they don't always have our best intentions at heart. They don't have our patient's best intentions. So there's a bit of importance around us kind of building from inside out versus outside in. Again, next project, the one that you guys might hear about a lot this weekend, Air Health. The parties and stuff, I promise you that's not actually what we do. But there are different problems we tried to figure out how to solve within our own offices. For me, it was selling products. I've been lucky enough to build some of the larger skincare brands out there. I hate selling products. We don't sell a single product in our office. I don't want to be a salesperson. I also don't want to have inventory. I have an office, there's 6 of us, I think, in the office. I don't have 40 practices where I can absorb tens of thousands of dollars per brand per month or whatever it is to do. For devices, the story I always love to give, and please make sure that the door is locked. I remember we bought a laser. I paid $70,000 for it. My colleague, who now works at our office, paid $195,000 for it. Another colleague paid $30,000 for it, all within the same 6-week span. People prey on the fact that we don't communicate, and there's a lack of transparency among us. We have to solve that problem because, again, it doesn't suit us well to live in our little silos. And so the idea is, can tech unify us, give us better transparency, and help us negotiate at mass? Same thing. If you know most of medicine, I think the biggest complaint everybody has are reimbursements are going down, or COGS, or cost of goods, are going up. I can't solve this reimbursement problem, at least I don't think so, but at least I can increase revenue maybe this way to help soften this, and we can, as a group, work on these COGS. So that's exactly what we did. So we built something called Air Health. It's taken, I don't know, 3-4 years to build it. It's been quite a bit, lots of friends, and it really helped, and I really appreciate everybody on there. But we wanted to start solving a few different problems. One is education. We started doing skincare sampling across the country. I'm in New York City. I have a small, but decent social media following. People send me products all day long. But what about the dermatologist in Iowa who sees 60, 70 patients a day, every single day? What about Dr. Noor, who sees like 90 patients a day, every single day? My running joke is that while people will give me the perception, or will believe the perception I have influence because of some social media following, Dr. Noor is a god to his patients, and there's like 100,000 or so in you guys and Dr. Rao's email listserv. Like, that is influence. Like that, they will eat, sleep, breathe, whatever it is you say, because you care for them, you serve them. And I don't think it's fair for people like me to get certain things that he shouldn't get, and vice versa. So, we want to democratize that ability. So we built this whole sampling platform, whether it's for residents, whether it's for attending, so they can get exposure to different products. And then if they want to sell those products, they can create a revenue source for them without inventory, without having to feel like they are salespeople for brands. If they recommend a product and if they want to donate the amount of money they generate from it, 100% fine. If they want to use it to support their staff, 1000% fine. If they have to absorb or offset some of the costs that they're incurring, 100% fine. Our job is not to tell people what to do, it's to give options and to really enable the dermatologist to be the kind of the center point in this kind of larger kind of skincare space. Same thing. The idea is for inventory. We actually did the revenue side. We did the math. You actually make more money on the skin store than practicing derm, I think, by year 3 or 4. Again, if you want to donate it, we donate all the money. You can do whatever you want. But imagine AAD or ASDS and all the things you can do positively by doing something you do every single day, which is recommend 2 to 3 products per day per patient every single time. Because every patient that comes in wants to know what sunscreen, what cleanser, what moisturizer they use. So I know there's some, I think, and rightfully so, you have to draw that line. You have to educate patients. This is what it is. It's like everything transparency by the book, but it's also okay to build different sources of revenue for your office if if you're working hard every day and you are supporting your patients. And also, every single skincare product has, I think, a 10 to 20% discount from where you see on Amazon. So the goal is the dermatologist should have the best access to products and also the cheapest ones for their patients. So it isn't actually a transactional thing. It's actually beneficial for everybody, God willing. And then so on the marketplace that I mentioned it, we're building a transparency initiative so people can anonymously report how much they're paying for devices. Will I get sued? Probably 1,000%. But the idea becomes, we've been doing this for a long time. We're not going to survive at the current rate with the expenses going up, so we need to unify a little bit. We're working on negotiating. We have deals with McKesson and other big groups to start lowering pricing because I have, again, one office, nor you have 3 offices, 4 offices. So you, by default, have better buying power than I do. But now we have 4,000 offices on the platform. So now we get buying power for 4,000 offices, much like a GPO. So the idea is strength in numbers. And this is where tech comes in because I don't know 4,000 derms, but I do know how to get 4,000 derms on a platform that we can unify throughout. And that's where I think digital health can be really powerful in technology. It's just about how you look at it. These are the problems. Again, I'm a little guy, right? How do I have a loud voice, right? And that's how all of us should really be thinking about this stuff. And so that's my story. Again, very thankful you guys have been kind enough to let me speak, but it's more important about you guys, right? So I want you guys to start thinking about, I say this every time I give a talk, I am the only thing different about me than anybody else is I'm stupid enough to think it'll work, honestly. I want you guys to start thinking about this stuff. I want you to start building stuff. We're here to support you in any way we can. Think about what is medicine going to look like in 2030, 2035? What is AI going to be like? Are we going to still be doing full body checks? We can say all we want to that we're not going to, technology will never replace us, but we all know that's the case. The idea becomes like, how do we control it without it letting it control us, right? Like there's a whole different mindset there. And, we can huff and puff all we want to, but think about it. We all said we would never do EMRs. Now 90-something% of people do EMRs. The idea becomes, you are more powerful than you realize. And the moment you realize that, we're all better off for it. So I want you to start really thinking about the problems you face now, but also what the problems will be later on. Best ways to get started. You can work with tech companies, reach out to people, intern, venture capitalists are always looking for stuff. I still rather you not raise money if you don't have to raise money, generally because they have different long-term and short-term alignments than you might have. But if sometimes it is necessary, things are expensive. I think for AIR, we spent a good amount of our personal money to build it, but we were passionate in thinking that it was the right thing to do. As I mentioned, in your own office, just identify the problems you see, talk to your friends. If more than 5 or 6 of you have a problem, it's probably worth pursuing. Think about distribution. I know this is not necessarily related to digital health, but actually does apply. I have about 10 billion people a day, I feel like, pitching me skincare lines, and especially derms. I'm never going to question if a derm colleague is smart enough or brilliant enough to create a skincare line. What I am going to question is how are you going to get your first 500 people to use it, or 1,000 people to use it, or 10,000 people to use it? Distribution is really the first thing you should be thinking about after you get that really good idea, because you have to get it into the hands of people using it. There's a lot of great ideas that never see the light of day because they don't have the opportunity to get to the people who really need to use it or want to use it. So whether it's skincare, whether it's tech, really figure out how do you have distribution. And again, I'm going to be very transparent with AIR. I have this beautiful dream, and we keep this within this room, that one day, right now we have the Neutrogenas and Cliniques and Cetaphils and all the other people of the world on our platform. Why can't we have derm brands? Why can't we have our colleagues on there? Why can't we be distribution for each other? So there is a kind of I think there's a beautiful world in which we all support each other. It takes time, and I think we're all a little bit, I think after residency and med school, conditioned to hate thy neighbor a little bit because you're so competitive. But I'm encouraged by the future generations because I feel like that's slowly kind of unwinding a bit, and I'm very hopeful that'll work out. And simply at the end of this, I just want to say, how can you change the field? It's simple. You just jump. You have to get that idea from the back of your head, put it in the front, and you have to just do it. It's there's beautiful things on the other side of that leap. This is my contact information. Again, so sorry that I had to flip schedules a little bit today, but I appreciate you guys always, and the fact that this is the thing, a digital health thing, as a kid who was obsessed with digital health when I was younger. And by the way, like personal heroes that I used to watch in lecture halls when I was a little bit earlier in my career. It's very humbling to be here, and I know this is just the start of something absolutely beautiful. So thank you guys very much, and I hope to see many of you guys soon.